I need to finish what I say first.
Bro, like, listen, all right, I don't like Stanley. I think the only person I have banned was Stanley.
And Nate, Stanley doesn't state the obvious, like what the
You don't think one parent influence is detrimental?
I literally said they need to understand that a one-parent influence
But like I say,
is
man, you
potentially
ain't really got to let these people
detrimental.
bother you like that. If they want to beef with you, it's called Stanley versus the world.
And just assume their character by stereotype?
I think people do that every day.
Okay, I didn't ask you. What
Do I think it's okay?
America, my name is Amiose Frimpong, and in a democratic society, it's not really clear why people should or could reject coalition politics. It would seem that if you're a minority, you need to join with other people to compose a viable 50% or higher majority in order to not be oppressed by the governing system that is of the enemy who is outside of your coalition. So it seems to be the case, and I'm going to argue that this is a con, that in order to live a life in a democracy, you need to engage in coalition politics. I'm telling you, black people, that no, that's not true. That's not true. One of the virtues of living in a constitutional democracy is your rights are secured by the Constitution, not by the coalition's power. So you should, and I'm going to bring it back to the ideal, and then also talk about the realistic, how this works out in reality. You should be able to live a life, even if it's not the life under the aspect of justice you would prefer. You should be able to live a form of justice, even if it's GOP justice, regardless of your participation in a coalition or your flat refusal to participate in any coalition. For example, in Georgia, it's not really clear that you gain anything by being a Democrat. They don't have statewide power. You are living under someone else's idea of justice, Brian Kemp's idea of justice. You are not living under Democrats' idea of justice, and you're definitely not living under the idea of justice that has autonomously or spontaneously and autonomously been has emerged from the black community. That's not the idea of justice you're living in. You're living in a different idea of justice, which still secures no small number of your rights. There's a reason why a good number of black people still live in Georgia, and we haven't all been run out. And there's a good reason why black people are leaving California and coming to Georgia. Right? It's not for the Republican governance necessarily, but it's because if you're going to live in alienated governance, sometimes it's a little bit cheaper to do it in a GOP state, right? So why do we think we need coalition governance in order to actually live a way of life, or that coalition governance will lead to community uplift, when it really hasn't for the last 60 years? You know who's been eating off of the coalition, the Democratic coalition? Professional class white women in that coalition, right? So let me tell you the logic of coalitions. There's this idea that everyone has slightly different interests, but there are some aspects where the interests converge, and we can join in other groups with a critical number of issues where the interests converge, and then govern in a way that completely subordinates those who have antagonistic interests to our converging interests, right? So that is the logic of coalition governance. So we could, it doesn't matter if our priorities, and I'll just take two groups in the Democratic coalition: professional class feminists and black communities. It doesn't matter that our interests are not uniform. There's the idea that there's enough overlap that we can both compromise and subordinate the non-overlapping aspects in order to fight for the overlapping aspects, which will propel us into governance over the GOP majority. And there's this idea that you should be in, as a Black Democrat, you should be in coalition. As a Black person, you should be in coalition with professional class feminists rather than working class whites. Now, I'm going to say both are trash as coalition partners, because actually being in a coalition presupposes a variety of equality with respect to how you sustain the coalition, right? So coalitions are institutions that are sustained, as all institutions are in this meat space, not by ideas necessarily, but by money and power, right? So they come into being for the sake of money and power, not necessarily ideas, because we have our own ideas. We have all of our interests. We've allowed ourselves, we subordinate some of our own interests in order to join other people in the coalition for the sake of power. So it takes something that should be an articulation of interest and right and rightful vision and make it about power. You only join a coalition for power. You might be able to be an ally, but you join a coalition for power, understanding that they don't have all of the same interests that you do. The problem with that is anytime there's a marginal interest that's not one of the core interests that we share, whose interests are going to be subordinated? Whose priorities are going to be subordinated? The people without the power. And we've seen this written. We've seen this with the idea of minority and women and minority-owned businesses. Whose idea was that? It certainly wasn't Black people. It certainly wasn't Black men. But it certainly wasn't Black people to lump affirmative action into women and minority issues. No, there are women's issues, and then there are minorities issues. You should not confuse one for the other. This was the power play of professional class feminists and white women. And you know who's dined out on women and minority issues? And women and minority business contracts and women and minority, like...
Hey, what's up, TMKC?
Geared affirmative action.
Hi, Stanley.
What you up to?
Nothing. I just came in from outside. I'm so angry today.
Oh, really? Why?
Because, okay, so I called the insurance company to find out what they're doing so they can give me my money so I could get my bumper fixed. You know, this heifer gonna try to tell me that she thinks it's joint liability for somebody rear-ending me.
What?
It's so idiotic, man. Okay, so I was at Walmart.
Well, hold on one sec. Back in my day, at least, if a person rear-ended you, it was always their fault.
That's
so,
what I'm saying.
It does not matter whose fault it was. You were following too closely if you rear-end someone.
And then we were in the parking lot. So, you know how, at Walmart, they don't have the parking spaces for the other side directly across as, slanted or whatever?
Right.
So I was in one side of the parking lot, parked next to, the median and the grocery cart thing. And the car that was in front of me that was parked on the other side was gone. So I drove across the space. And when I drove across the space, I started heading towards leaving Walmart. And when I was past about 2 or 3 spaces, that's when a car just came from nowhere and hit the corner of my bumper.
So you were already in the you were out of the space. You pulled forward, and then
yes, I was out of the space already. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, rear-ending is rear-ending. What did the police say?
They said they can't file police reports for private property, so I would have to take them to court. So they did. Yeah, they said because I was at Walmart and it's private property, so I can't file a police report for an accident that happens there.
Oh wow! Oh my Lord!
But what's so idiotic is how does the front end of his car rear end me, but yet he's accusing me of sideswiping him? How can I sideswipe him if I'm going forward? How do I sideswipe the front end of your car?
Have you talked to a lawyer?
Well, since I don't have any injuries, they don't really want to deal with me. They actually told me to call the Missouri bar. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm calling them for to sit on hold all day? Yeah.
Well, start early in the morning. I'm sorry to hear this because I mean, well, insurance companies these days don't want to pay out stuff. I mean, how expensive is it to get the bumper fixed?
I haven't even checked because I just wanted it fixed because I haven't been driving really since Thursday. Today is like my first day actually driving my car. But somebody like pushed my bumper up to where the trunk will try to hold it in place, but since I was on the highway, it fell down. It
Well,
wasn't
I was
dragging on the
about to
ground.
say sometimes if it's not really expensive, but it sounds
Mhm.
like they did more damage than the bumper.
Yeah. I don't know how much damage because I don't know how to fix cars, but I
Well, no,
mean, you
just
can
take
almost
it
put
in.
it back in place. It's just all the hooks that it connects to is all broken because it was ripped out of it.
Well, do this. Take it for an estimate, just to a car shop or something, or maybe even somewhere that the insurance recommends.
Hmm.
Get an estimate. Now, here's the deal. Sometimes if it's not real expensive, sometimes it's better just to go ahead and deal with it because insurance companies will look for a way to increase your monthly your what are they premiums that you pay every month. So if it's like $1,000, it might be worth it just not to deal with all the paperwork. The
Yeah,
other
I
reason
went through
I
their
asked,
insurance company because it ain't my fault at all. I'm not
right.
watching behind me like that. Like, that's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, there's no if somebody's going to rear end you. There's really not that. That's really like if somebody's going to rear end you, how are you going to avoid it? I mean, it's
Right,
not.
exactly. And I think
But
he was probably trying to be a bully and just wasn't effective because, like,
right.
even if it's so called, I cut him off. One, he wasn't coming for me to see him because I wouldn't have never cut him off. I had no reason
It
to.
doesn't matter. None of that matters. He rear ended you. Period. That you don't need to reason or rationalize. Um, what you need to do is get the estimate. All you're doing is say, how much will it cost to fix this? Get
Hmm.
it like in writing or something like that. And
Hmm.
then I, at a minimum, would at least get like a consultation with the lawyer. That's why they're saying call the bar. See if you can't just get like a legal clinic, some sort of advice. And, I don't know what small claims court, how that works.
Hmm.
Sometimes, if I recall, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think in small claims court you can actually represent yourself.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think there's some options at least to explore. I don't know how you resolve it, but if your insurance company isn't going to pay for it. The other option is to check that person's insurance company. The thing is, if the cops aren't willing to get involved, then it really makes it difficult. I can't believe that something like an auto accident on private property. uh, so the cops told you that.
Yep.
Wow. I Wow. Okay. I wish Juan were around. If you run into
He ain't
Juan on
talking to me. For some reason, when Drip did his little expose on me or whatever the fuck he called himself doing, there's been like a lot of people who decided to pick sides. I'm not a content creator, so the fact that they're doing it, I'm not fucking with them. And he's one of the people because I actually spoke to him and he didn't respond to me, so I just went ahead and blocked him.
Okay. You know what? I haven't been keeping up with Drip that much. I was in there for a few minutes the other day, and it wasn't a topic that interested me. I guess at some point you'll have to catch me up on what's been going on. I've been hearing
I
all
haven't been
kinds
around either. I haven't been around ever since me and him had a fight. And I told him that I wasn't dealing with him anymore. And it just turned into a whole bunch of chaos because he created a video that he made member only saying a whole bunch of derogatory stuff about me. And it's not like it's all untrue, but the way he tried to spin his narrative makes it extremely untrue. And then he just said some outrageous lies that pissed me off. So
well,
I'm not
I
fucking
I
with him.
know for sure. I feel your pain because I've had the same thing with John Galt. Some things that when you're little, when you spend stuff and you've got a lot of true believers, they will just, it's almost like Trump, in
Mhm.
MAGA. They revere, like a John Galt. His true believers revere him so much, they will literally allow him to defy logic and go along with it. So,
I know, like, come on. And then who talks about a subscriber who supported your channel more than probably 90% of the people over there, and then you gonna talk about me every day for 2 weeks, like at the beginning of all his shows. Like,
that
dude,
doesn't really
stop
sound
it.
like Drip, though.
Oh yeah. I never thought he would do no shit like that either.
Because,
So
I mean, he's all into respecting women.
no, he didn't respect me. Not at all. And then ex friend was on the panel when he first started it, laughing. So I definitely don't fuck with her because she's part of the reason why me and him had so many problems. I would have found out he was a creep if she wasn't involved in the first place. But hey,
Right.
but I heard that he got into an accident with a 18 wheeler or something. I'm just waiting to see the evidence. I told him I'm sorry that it happened to him because I am. I don't wish that kind of heartache on anybody, but I would
Well, I
like
would
to see
think
proof.
almost any accident with an 18 wheeler is going to be major.
No. Yeah, because he told me a lot of stuff that he had wrong, and I was like, oh shit, like that hurt. Like just because
Well,
I'm mad at you, I don't wish no bad luck on you. Not that kind.
right. Well, let's finish up with irony. And just actually, since I have it paused, everybody make sure you hit the like button. And if you are new, make sure you subscribe to the channel. This is basically kind of like a pop up. I'll probably move to shorter shows in the morning. And then, if I have something to talk about, in this case, it's Clarence Thomas, and it's based on a question that CKJ3 asked me over the weekend. And I happen to have his biography. I thought I had his autobiography on Kindle. I read it. Maybe I read it in hard copy. Um, but anyway, there's also a 2 hour kind of documentary, in his own words documentary that is out on YouTube. And I figured, we just, probably all together, maybe 3 hours worth of content. We'll just talk about Clarence Thomas. And just so folks know, I'm from Savannah, Georgia. I literally grew up in the parish that Clarence Thomas was a part of. So I've known people who knew Clarence Thomas. He practiced law there, I think, briefly after he graduated from Yale. So I know right where Pinpoint is. It's in Chatham County. I literally, um, am from the same Peter Terre. And St. Benedict's Church is, I think, the oldest Black parish in the United States. So it has a distinction there. There's actually a documentary out on it that I viewed maybe a year ago. Maybe I'll pull that out, if not tonight, at some point. But anyway, so I have some affinity for Clarence Thomas, not necessarily, point of view wise, but, he is a respected elder who is, kind of has, he's a different generation, of course, but, kind of has the same roots. I mean, we've walked the same ground occasionally over there on the east side, of Savannah. So anyway, let's get back to Irony. We'll finish this up, and then I do have one other story that I'll talk about. That's kind of like an emergent story, and then we'll get into Clarence Thomas.
Feminists.
Oh, and by the way,
Expensive.
it's semi-open panel. I was making the joke the other day, Tamika, that I don't ever have open panels. If I have an open panel, it'll say it in the title. So, anybody's welcome, but I'm really not wanting to deviate too much from the topic.
Okay, I
Black women
understand.
and
Oh, well, you have carte blanche. I mean, I don't, what you came up to talk about, I have no problems with.
black men and other minorities, right? So, I've met no small number of professional class feminists who nevertheless find themselves as the majority holder of their husband's roofing or plumbing business or other construction business or even nonprofit that their father built. That's the thing. And they definitely, these professional class feminists definitely get their inheritance from their dad, and will fight and distort politics in order to secure their inheritance they get from their dad, which is never going to go to a black person, right? So our coalition partners do not have identical interests, which is stipulated in joining a coalition. Like, you don't have coalition partners with identical interests. The idea is that we all have to subordinate our interests that aren't shared, except when you join into a coalition with people who have a disproportionate access to resources that will sustain the coalition. That's money and money and power and the ability to emotionally manipulate in the way that black people can't. It turns out that white women are more sympathetic and taken up as more sympathetic by society than black men. Would you believe? So yeah, not only do they have access to their husbands and fathers' resources, they also have the gendered aspect of manipulation, which works in America, right? So they are in many ways, in almost all ways, more powerful than their coalition partners when their coalition partners are black people. They will not be more right, but coalitions are not about, and coalitions injustice is definitely not about right. It's about power. You join coalitions for the sake of power, not for the sake of right. We think that those white professional class feminists are wrong, but we join in coalition with them for power to take over, to triumph over other political enemies. But it turns out that interests don't work like that, right? So I have an interest. I have a family of interests, and they have a family of interests, and it's not like they can just overlap like this. Their family of interests are mutually reinforcing other aspects which are antithetical to black interests, right? So their interest in women's empowerment actually becomes antithetical to black interests when they're trying to empower women to be able to step on black men and black families. And if you listen to Martha Griffin's, and I did a whole show about this on last time, black women, right? So their feminism is only isn't disaggregated from their racial interests, right? So there's this idea that we could share interests in equal rights for women. That's fine. But their concern for equal rights with women is tied, imbricated, and unable to be excised from their concern for getting their husband's business contract and getting their father's inheritance. They don't want that to go to an estate tax or into reparations. They want to keep it for themselves. So this is why the coalition of Black people with professional class feminists hasn't been particularly good for labor politics, hasn't been particularly good for race.
Hey, CKJ3. I'm doing this Justice Thomas show, kind of based on, the questions you had this weekend about Clarence Thomas. So hit the panel if you want. To the Martha Griffiths point, I've shown the clip a couple times. Sex is a protected class in the 64 Civil Rights Bill. It wasn't there. In the late 60s, I guess, or maybe it was very early 70s, Martha Griffiths basically pressured her way into having sex added as a protected class to the Civil Rights Bill. And she literally said, well, I'm paraphrasing, but white women like Martha Griffiths were afraid that Black women would have access and rights to, or access to rights that white women might not have. And there's a book by a lady named Dr. Stephanie Jones. She's a history professor at UC Berkeley. She wrote a book some years ago now called They Were Her Property. And the premise of the book is that white women were explicitly owners of property. And it's a fascinating book. White women as, pedestalized angels who had nothing to do with oppressing Black people during slavery. They were literally slave owners in a lot of cases. So I agree with Arami that feminism, at least for white women, is disaggregated from any sort of racial justice. They're literally two discrete objects, and they do not intersect. I guess they could, but they generally don't. So in a lot of ways, Black women who call themselves feminists are in some ways working against the interest of social justice for the Black community.
Politics, and it hasn't been particularly good, actually, even for gender politics. Who it has been good for is professional class women, because since they already come in to the coalition with the most access to money, power, and emotional suasion, everybody else ends up working for them, because that's the logic of coalition partners with unequal relations within the partnership, right? So we just need to eschew coalition politics. We need to eschew coalition politics and understand that rights, properly understood, will protect you in the absence of a coalition, in the same way that the Democratic coalition has been out of power in Georgia, yet there are still people in Georgia who do just fine without Democrats, in Black people in Georgia who do just fine without Democrats being in power. You want to come say hi to the people? My kids just got home. Come say hi, people. Hi, people. Hi. My kids, how's your day?
Good.
You wore your sport glasses today at school.
On accident. I forgot to change out of them.
Yeah, we went for a run this morning, and then she wore her sport glasses today at school. But our kids are very fast, and they have state next on Saturday. So how are you going to do it state? Tell the people. Speak it into existence.
I'm going to make the state record.
There you go.
I'm going to win and make the state record. And on the state after that, I'm going to win.
And for the whole team.
For the whole team.
For the whole team. Great job, kiddos.
All right, in the varsity race, middle school.
Yep, and she's only in 5th grade, but she's still the fastest varsity racer we have. All right, I got to finish this show, and my glasses are right here. Okay, so I'm gonna finish the show, and I'll be up, and we'll talk about snacks before we go to practice. Okay.
Yes.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, people.
Come say. Look at the camera and say bye, people.
Bye, people.
Bye, people. All right, take care. I'll see you soon.
Bye, bye.
All right. So, you do not need coalition politics to raise the family I'm raising in Georgia. Because the Democratic coalition loses, and yet, would you believe my family exists? So we do not need these people. We do not need these people. We do not need these people in order to secure by right to live. Now, it won't be the aspect of justice I would prefer necessarily, but I don't get that in California either, and I have to pay a lot more. And so this idea that we need coalitions in order to sustain the same quality of life that we have without a winning coalition is ridiculous, and it's sold to us by women who want to make move. And also, so how we should do this is actually just look at specific issues. Say like, no, I'm not going to join in coalition with you. I'm not going to subordinate my other interests in order to make sure that our coalition sustains power. But I will work with you on this one thing and not try to pretend that it is tied to anything else. And while I work with you on this one thing, I'll go work with the GOP on this one thing too. Now, Yvette Carnell gets in trouble with this because she doesn't work with the Democratic coalition. She works with Republicans when it comes to like border control and making sure Black people get jobs and are not replaced. And then she works with Democrats when it comes to issues that are better for ADOS with Democrats, right? And that's the way we should be doing politics. We should not pretend that our coalition partners will subordinate their non-convergent interests to the uplift of Black communities, right? And 60 years of of being fooled by white liberals have just allowed white women to dine out, professional class white women to dine out at the expense of everybody else in their coalition. So we need to be honest that we need to not pretend that we are in coalition with these people, but that we need to disaggregate single issues and deal with single issues, not even partnerships, issue campaigns, and be very promiscuous with who we're willing to work with in these issue campaigns, and not pretend that we're going to subordinate other issues in the Black community for the sake of our coalition partners' feelings. By the way, you don't hear people talk about this, and you should. And you should hear people talk about like this. And so that's why you should go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And I will keep talking about this, because the hard argument against coalition politics isn't going to be made by any liberal or anybody who needs, the check of professional class white women or feminists. Because I'm saying that the feminist coalition and the Black coalition, those are like the feminist interest group and the Black interest group. Those are two different interest groups. The Black interest group needs to be able to put their foot on the neck of the feminists, especially when it's Black men and women like want to secure jobs against the white professional class women who are very comfortable with that, especially when it's Black people who want to secure reparations against white professional class women who want justice, but they also want their daddy's inheritance, and they also want to be able to put their name on their husband's business and get that woman and minority contract and all of these other things that Black people can't do, right? So we need single issue relationships, and we need to be openly promiscuous with our single issue relationships. And if you're working with me on this single issue, I will work with you on this single issue while not subordinating any other aspect of any other Black issue, because that's the problem with Democratic politics right now. We'll work with the professional class feminists against some aspects of the Klan. The price of that, since they'll own all of the conditions, the material conditions to sustain that condition, the price of that is that we have to shut up about other aspects of justice that they're uncomfortable with. We have to shut up about reparations. We have to shut up about the ridiculousness of women and minority-owned businesses. No, there are minority-owned stuff, and then there's women-owned stuff. Have your own stuff. Hold, as Tariq Nasheed said, and I don't often quote him, hold your own nuts. And because as it stands, when we are in coalition with the Democrats, it's black people shutting up about things that would actually help the black community. And that is not the kind of politics we need. That's just confusing. That's just confusing. And we can live fine without the coalition politics. And we don't live that much worse without the coalition politics, and we're less confused. And I think being less confused is important. So, I do this show so that you're less confused about your role in life. I do this show so you can have kids like my kids who win races and who aren't confused. And if you support what I do, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com because, race fees and I got bills to pay. All right. Take care. I will talk to you at another time.
All right. Well, I think there's some wise, if not apparent, to me, it seems, kind of readily apparent that, you work with the political party that best serves your interests. And, it could be, essentially he's advocating cherry picking, which I don't have a problem with. Going with Democrats because your daddy voted Democrat. I'm not sure. I think those times have passed, and it doesn't seem that wise in 2025. It's good advice. There's some things I could cherry pick or nitpick, but won't spend the time doing it. Something to take under consideration. And Irony often does that. He'll make you think if nothing else. So, this just came down about 50 minutes ago. Trump Democrats leave meeting without a deal to avoid government shutdown. And I think, let's see, is it tomorrow? The Senate actually comes back into session tomorrow with a midnight deadline to, avoid a government shutdown. We shall see what happens. The other thing that's going to happen tomorrow, apparently, Trump and or Pete Hegseth will be addressing all those admirals and generals that they've gathered at Quantico for tomorrow. That's supposed to happen around 8:15 or so. So I'll try and start up the show in time to catch that those festivities if possible. So let's see, any details here? So the meeting at the White House with the four House and Senate leaders yielded nothing. And one of the threats that the Trump administration is doing to kind of, poison pill a government shutdown is threaten permanent job cuts in federal agencies overseeing environmental regulation, agriculture, and labor. While House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries said Democrats will not support a partisan spending bill. And at risk is subsidies expiring at year's end, basically making or increasing premiums for insurance that people get through Obamacare. So I think that Democrats are doing the right thing. The question becomes, is this, for the greater good? But, higher insurance premiums is definitely something, that should be fought for. So let's move on to the kind of theme of today's show. Justice Thomas says legal precedents are not gospel. And this is a position he's had for years, being willing to overturn, things like Roe v. Wade. That was a precedent that a lot of conservative justices, during the nomination phase said, "Hey, you know what? We recognize the legal precedent of Roe and will honor it." So we know how that went in the end. And not Trump, Thomas literally said in that Asians versus Harvard and UNC, he wrote a separate concurring opinion, basically said that things like Obergefell, which basically legalized same-sex marriage and some other precedents as far as contraceptives and that sort of thing, they need to be revisited. And of course, they need to be revisited because Thomas has this sort of conservative majority, and they stand a way better chance of precedent being overturned. And historically, the Dred Scott decision was a precedent that lasted for decades, or if not 100 years, and that was overturned. So, he's kind of even got history, on his side, though I think it's pretty cynical, but it is what it is. So the other thing I wanted to point out, if I can figure out how to do this, CKJ3 mentioned essentially the question was, what makes Justice Thomas click? And I have an answer to that. I mentioned a biography of Justice Thomas by a guy named Corey Robin. And just so happens I have that book on my Kindle. And I finally figured out how to have a look at what I have on Kindle. Took me a minute. But just want to note, somebody asked, well, where are all of Stanley's books? Well, it says here roughly 352 of my books are on Kindle, and a lot easier to carry those books around, I should say. So for all of you who wonder where all these books that I swear and claim to read, they are here on my Kindle. So we want Corey Robin. There we go. So the book I'm talking about is called The Enigma of Clarence Thomas by Corey Robin. Let's see if I can open it. So that's the cover. I recommend the book. If you have any questions about kind of Thomas's background, and some comments about his legal philosophies. And this may or may not answer some of CKJ's questions. This is Corey Robin kind of talking about Justice Thomas's kind of outlook on Black America and, the whole race stuff. Says here, American capitalism is built on centuries of slavery and Jim Crow, Justice Thomas argued, which have led to deep structural inequities in contemporary society. So the structural inequities that he's talking about is literally structural or systemic racism. So even Clarence Thomas believes that structural inequities, structural racism actually exist. So the structural inequities in contemporary society, that was the reality African Americans confronted when they entered the market, like the job market or just, the economic markets. But while liberals and leftists saw that inequality as an argument for state intervention and redress, Thomas now believed that the inequality only exposed the limitations of the state and how insufficient were its tools. How unlikely was the prospect of overcoming this social disrepair through government action. So essentially, Clarence Thomas doesn't think that the government can address racial inequities effectively. So, and I'm going to read a little bit more of this, though it's not highlighted. Basically, he said, you've got this conglomeration of factors that make it impossible for people from different groups to compete. Ooh, let me go back there. That make it impossible for people from different groups to compete against each other fairly. Some people inherit a lot of money. You can't compete against that. Some people have 6 generations of educated people in their family. It's difficult to compete against that if you come from Anacostia. That's basically Southeast DC, I believe. So centuries of oppression had left Black America with both economic deficits and cultural deficit, broken families, failing schools, etc. And then we'll skip ahead a couple pages. Thomas felt, African Americans, Thomas felt, should abandon protest in the streets and the pursuit of political power in favor of economic visions of development. That is textbook Booker T. Washington. We'll never have political power. We will never have the type of social power that white people do. We need to concentrate on economics. As Williams would describe, and I don't know which Williams, I'd have to go back and look it up, but I'm not going to do that right now. As Williams would describe Thomas's mature vision, it is unlikely that whites will ever fully accept blacks as equals, so blacks should prepare to do for themselves by making black schools into rigorous training grounds, by investing in black businesses, by working for black corporations, and by living in black neighborhoods. Okay, that is classic John Galt. That is classic Booker T. Washington. And I believe this is the truth that, Galt says that people like me can't accept, or black people like me can't accept. Forget the traditional pressure tactics, demonstrations, boycotts, lobbying by civil rights groups that are meant to gain a share of power, wealth, and influence in white institutions. Given what Thomas claimed about the pervasiveness of racism, it is difficult to see how he could believe that the economy was untouched by the forces of race. So essentially, this economic thing that Thomas and Booker T. Washington and many black conservatives feel economics is the only arena that blacks can actually do for themselves and excel in. And that was actually true back during Jim Crow. Okay, things were better, as someone like a Byron Donalds would say, during Jim Crow, because blacks pretty much were segregated into a closed system. And you could succeed if you were competing with other black people. There would be rich black people compared to other black people. Essentially, stop competing with the whites. You'll never beat them at their own game in the United States. So Thomas went from kind of a black radical to black conservatism, and in my opinion, it's a natural fit. Justice Thomas does believe that's why he was so against affirmative action. It was the state trying to level a playing field, and Thomas basically felt, or still feels, that there is no way to level the playing field. It's systemic. The best blacks can do is concentrate on their munyon and try and do the best they can. Now, Corey Thomas's rebuttal to that is, what makes you think that the economic playing field is level? And I kind of agree with that point of view. Let's see, what else do we have here? This comment here, black people had survived Jim Crow because there was at least some economic liberty, some economic freedom, even though political and social freedom were denied. Again, while the ability of markets to provide a haven or a refuge from oppression was a truth of social systems in general, Thomas believed that truth applied with special force to black people in the United States. Essentially, economics is basically the only way blacks can get ahead. Can't do it socially, can't do it politically. The system is rigged against us. And that's kind of consistent with, things like when he deals with race, like affirmative action issues, he basically says, hey, blacks, you have to fend for yourself. Okay. You need to basically live in black neighborhoods, buy black, etc. And, there are people like me or W.E.B. Du Bois that, that's essentially letting white America off the hook. Okay. It's basically saying that, hey, look, you know what? It's okay being a second class citizen. Like Be Brave says, hey, even as second class citizens, blacks live like kings compared to other communities in the African diaspora. Basically, hey, you're doing good. Don't seek to be better. And I'm sorry, that literally, to me, that's defeatist. If you want to live that way, that's fine, but don't expect all black people to buy into that. Which song are you talking about? Oh, okay. Well, so anyway, with all that, and I'll drop the book because I highly recommend it. I'll at least link it if I can. It's Corey Robin. It's called the let's see, can I figure out, because I don't ever use Kindle on my computer. Let's see, can we go back here? There we go. This is the book, The Enigma of Clarence Thomas. If you're interested in this sort of thing, I recommend it. It's a good book. And Corey Robin, by the way, is a political science professor, a political theorist, is what he calls himself, teaching at Brooklyn College. So with that, we will sally forth to this Clarence Thomas movie that I found on YouTube, which I'd started watching some months back and never quite finished. So we'll just watch it, and if anybody wants to come up, feel free to hit the link. We can talk about Clarence Thomas. And the name of the this YouTube movie is called Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in His Own Words. And it's a long one. It's about 2 hours, but we'll slog through it, or at least most of it.
James, are we keeping the glasses on or off? Does it matter?
The only issue is that because they're bifocals, there's a line going through his eye.
Do you need them on, Justice Thomas?
No. I wear them. That's my normal. I normally have glasses on.
Yes, not on the cover of your book.
Well, except for the cover of my book, I know.
They do cover Anita Hill.
Thomas, how did you decide
it's kind of like his own. It's kind of like
you
a
look around
documentary,
society and you see it's laws. Laws affect everybody. If you're poor and you look at people like my grandfather, I think of when he came home one day and he was very upset and he was taking a drink. He never took a drink in the middle of the day. Well, what had happened was he was driving the oil truck. Police officer stops him for having too many clothes on. And that's ridiculous. He has no way of challenging that. So the law, he ran into the law, and he always was afraid of that. You couldn't walk across certain parks. You couldn't go to certain schools. People's property being taken. People taking advantage of them because they could say the law did this or did that. So I decided I was going to go to law school.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated.
Howell Heflin. I actually remember some of this.
Life and history.
Some of this. I might have even watched it live.
Somewhat of an enigma. You have gone through many changes in your life, which brings us to the question of what is the real Clarence Thomas like?
The person you see is Clarence Thomas. I don't know that I would call myself an enigma. I'm just simply different from what people painted me to be. My earliest memories are those of Pinpoint, Georgia, a life far removed in space and time from this room, this day, and this moment.
Oh, we're going to have to definitely silence that part of it. There is actually a Moon River, by the way. It's real. And Johnny Mercer, who wrote the song, is from Savannah. I guess I could skip through this. Yep, Johnny Mercer's theme from Savannah. Here, let me skip through that. And by the way, I had a friend whose grandparents had some sort of estate on the Moon River.
In the Boo Radley's yard. She's in a tire. I have no idea how kids today could have any idea what they were doing with her inside a tire. We always did that. I remember years later reading Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer and wondering what the fuss was about. We had done a lot of those things. And one day I came home, someone said there'd been a fire. And we get there, and this little shack that we had all been living in was just ashes and twisted tin, and everything that you ever knew in life is just there. I mean, it's smoldering.
That's River Street.
When I was a boy, Savannah was hell. My mother lived in one room in this old tenement with an outdoor bathroom. That is the worst place I've ever lived. And so you had the contrast between rural poverty, which is what we had in Pinpoint, which was very livable. And then you had urban squalor, and that was horrible. Because whenever you flushed the toilet or someone else flushed that didn't actually go in the sewer system, it went in somebody else's yard. My all-encompassing word is gross, and it was putrid. It was a smell of raw sewage. There were these boards. People would make these sort of makeshift paths to get across just the gross wetness in the backyard. Savannah is still a segregated city. One of the major parks downtown is a rectangle, Forsyth Park. You were never allowed to walk to the interior of that park. That's how I figured out the word circumnavigate. So you walk around, and so you could not go across the park.
Really?
I was supposed to go to school in the afternoon. My mother wasn't there to make me go because she had to go to work. So I wandered the streets by myself. I was 6. You were hungry and didn't know when you'd eat, and cold and didn't know when you'd be warm again. My mother had difficulty with 2 little boys and working as a maid. So she asked my grandparents for help. And my grandmother suggested that she let her raise these 2 boys. And one Saturday morning, we woke up and my mother said, put all your things in the grocery bag. And remember the paper grocery bags in those days. And my brother took one and neither one was full. But all of our items, just imagine everything you have in less than a paper bag. So we took our grocery bag each and walked the couple of blocks from Henry Lane to East 32nd Street. That was the longest and most significant journey I ever made because it changed my entire life. My grandfather was this myth. He was very stern. So he sat us there at the kitchen table and he said, boys, the damn vacation is over. And he said from then on, it was going to be rules and regulations and manners and behavior. Oh my goodness, and he meant it. And he just explained what the rules were. My grandmother was always right, that he was in charge. He made it very clear that it was by grace that we were there, his grace. And the door in 1955, when we went to live with him, was swinging open, inward. And if we didn't behave ourselves, there'd be a day when it would swing outward and we'd be asked to leave. And they lived in this new house and it was beautiful. For us, it could have been a palace. We'd never been in a house with a bathtub. Beautiful white porcelain toilet. My brother and I, one of our activities was to flush that toilet every time we had a chance. I mean, we would walk by and flush the toilet. And my grandfather said he would chastise us and said, you're running up as he would say, you're running up my damn water bill. Beautiful, as we used to say back then, modern kitchen with refrigerator, etc., and lots of food. And my grandmother would just lavish you with those things. My grandmother was as sweet as she could be. She would always be saintly. By the time we went to live with my grandfather, he was delivering fuel oil. The rule was we got out of school at 2:30. You had to be home, dressed, and ready to be on the oil truck by 3. When you rode with him, he was the professor. You could not initiate a conversation. So you were constantly getting this one-way input. He thought that we were destined to have to work for everything because of what happened in the Garden of Eden and because of our fallen nature. We would have to earn everything by the sweat of our brow. That was biblical. And we would have to work from sun to sun, biblical. The philosophy of life that he had came from biblical sources. On Christmas Day, 1957, we went to the place where he had grown up, which we called the farm. The 60 acres had been passed down undivided from generation to generation, as was customary with land owned by Southern blacks. And every summer after that, we farmed. He thought that we needed to be kept busy during the summer, and he didn't want us around our no-good friends in the city and that riffraff. He said the idle hands were the devil's workshop. Your time is dominated by labor. And there's a lot of it, from sun to sun. He started plowing with Penn Jack's horse, Lizzie, which was a very spirited animal. And we would go running behind them. We cut down trees, and he would always do it manually. You didn't use a chainsaw, you used a crosscut saw. It seemed like everything was made to be doubly hard. You're a little kid, you say you can't do it, and he would just say over and again, old man can't is dead. I help bury you. You're building a fence line. You have to learn how to stretch barbed wire. If you did something stupid, he would say to you, you know what? If I could cultivate your head down to the size of your brain, a peanut hull would make you a sunhead. Now, that's not exactly a compliment. You got to learn how to gut fish. You don't want to be there up to your eyebrow in scales and fish guts and smell. And then the accompaniment, the flies, the gnats, the mosquitoes, etc. And you'd say, you want to give up? And he said, you can give out, but you can't give up. My grandmother would say, like, you should give them a compliment or do this. And he said, no, that's their job to do it right. The family farm and our unheated oil truck became my most important classrooms. The schools in which my grandfather passed on the wisdom he had acquired as an ill-educated, modestly successful black man in the Deep South. My grandfather understood that education was the key because he didn't have it, and that's what held him back. And he said that he went to the 3rd grade, but school was 3 months out of the year because you had to work.
Could he read the Bible?
He could make out certain words in the Bible. When he got a portion of it, like most of the people I knew, most were uneducated and most were functionally illiterate and many were totally illiterate. They would get a part of the Bible that they would memorize or they knew the story, and that would become lexicon. God, his own way, converted to Roman Catholicism in 1949. It followed that Catholic schools had to be better than public schools. So he sent my brother and me to one. Remember now, I'm 7 years old. My brother is 6. And he says to us, you are going to go to school every day. And if you are sick, you're still going. And if you die, you will go, I will take your body for 3 days to make sure you're not faking. And he meant it. It's one thing if somebody says it and you think they're exaggerating. He wasn't that kind of guy. The Catholic schools were very orderly. My brother used to say, when you walked in there, you could hear a gnat tiptoeing across cotton. It was segregated. The nuns didn't much appreciate the fact that blacks were treated that way. They were mostly Irish nuns, and they were outspoken too. Oh God, I love it. They were on our side from day one. You knew they loved you. And when you think somebody loves you and deeply cares about your interests, somehow they can get you to do hard things. Sister Mary Virgilius, my 8th grade teacher, when she saw my entrance exam scores to high school, she looked me in the eye in 1962 and said, you lazy thing, you. In other words, I was underachieving. It was actually accurate, and I've never forgotten it. Having been one of St. Benedict's most dependable altar boys, I had also been thinking about the possibility of becoming a priest.
Brian, I responded, yep, St. Benedict's. Believe it or not, I was an altar boy at St. Benedict's in high school. Actually, before high school, I guess, probably middle school. So, yep, I am a Catholic like him. He is older, and yep, we attended the same parish, same altar boys on the same altar. Believe that or not.
A few months shy of my 16th birthday, I decided I wanted to enter St. John Vianney, the diocesan minor seminary, to prepare for the priesthood. So I told my grandfather, who wasn't initially all that excited because it was expensive. And I remember when he took me to the front porch to have a talk. And I told him that I thought I had a vocation and it would be great. And he said, well, if you go, you know you can't quit. I showed up one Sunday evening with my grandfather. He drove me there and he dropped me off. And then he left. And so I'm there by myself and I look around. And so I'm the new kid, so I'm the outsider and I'm black. So obviously I didn't fit right in. So I was like, what the heck?
Did you have kind of a fear of failure in the early days?
It's a new world in every way. It's a foreign world. And the work is much more demanding. So obviously that would create the sense in you that I may not be able to live up to the expectations. Father Coleman said to me that I would not be considered the equal of whites if I didn't learn how to speak standard English. As much as it hurt, there was some truth to it. I'm someplace between my dialect and quote unquote talking Southern, but certainly nothing close to standard English. But internally, I vowed to learn English and that no one would be able to ever say that about me.
Let me also make a point, and I've heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've actually heard that one of the reasons that he never asked questions in his first 20 years is he was self-conscious about his Southern drawl, which in my opinion is nothing to be ashamed of. I don't know, we are like, I don't know. I've never had a problem with, I don't really have that. Well, let me put it to you this way. People in the North, like I remember meeting this woman, a friend of my girlfriend, up in New York. Actually, it was upstate New York. And as soon as I said hello, she's like, "Oh, you're from the South." But people in the South don't believe I'm from the South. It's it's one of those things. But I don't know. He was self-conscious, supposedly, about his accent. That's why he didn't talk much during his first couple decades on the court, which to me is just ridiculous.
We were doing Robert Frost. And
no idea at this point, Lupin,
two roads
as far as a weekend show.
And I took the one less
But
traveled.
something will come up.
Made all the difference.
I'll have to skip through this. I think I will, if it's very long.
And what I was thinking was,
Damn it.
someplace in my
I
life,
wish there was a way I could
the roads
silence
had
the
split off.
music.
I was no longer
Oh, look at
in
those beautiful
the
marshes.
world that was my comfort zone. I'd gone to the seminary. I'd gone to all white schools. And then it's made all the difference. What was that difference? That I didn't know. I was never going to be a part of that world. I was never going to be white. The problem is I could never go back completely to the world I came from.
I want to make one comment here because I think my high school, my particular high school, Benedictine Military School, has been around since 1903. It's curious that he wound up, at a seminary, and that seminary, as far as I know, didn't exist when I was a kid. But in some ways, I can kind of sympathize. I was lucky in that I went to my high school was like 95% white. But I had a place to go back to. I mean, as I said, the summers I spent, in my neighborhood, I could go, once I left school, I was back amongst my peers. I get home from school, do my homework, and play basketball for a couple hours in my backyard. So in a way, I was able to traverse, if that's the right word, between the two worlds. Um, Back when Clarence Thomas was growing up, it was so segregated. It really was more difficult. So, I get what he's saying. And being from Savannah, I don't know so much about now because I haven't lived there in decades. But when I was a teenager, there literally was a black Savannah and a white Savannah. And most of the time I was growing up, the city was population wise 50% black, 50% white. So it was literally a divided city. And there was intermingling at work and occasionally socially, but it was almost magical in a way. It wasn't like, people just went back to their side of the town and, I'll see you tomorrow at work or at school. So, Savannah, when I was growing up, was um, a lot less. I can feel for Justice Thomas, is all I'm saying. He's not going to get, a big, like, you should have done this or you should have done that. Back during segregation in Savannah, it was tough. And, being a obviously smart kid like him, smart black kid, it was tough. He went through some shit.
I loved the contemplative life. I loved lauds, which was the morning prayers, vespers, evening prayers. I loved the Gregorian chant. And academically, I did very well.
So what was the caption under your photo in that yearbook?
I think it's blew that test, only a 98. And here was my thinking. You assume you're going to be discriminated against. Or at the very least, you're not going to be treated the same way as whites. So I can't get a 98. And if I'm going to force someone to have to discriminate against me, then I have to have 100. In other words, leave them nothing but race. To force them, it's sort of like checkmate. Okay?
In those days the Catholic Church had little to say about racism. It seemed self-evident that the treatment of blacks in America cried out for the unequivocal condemnation of a righteous institution.
Maybe some tear gas ahead. Yes. I say to you this afternoon that I would rather down the highways of Alabama than make a butchery of my conscience. Yes,
See that they turn around and disperse.
Yet the church remained silent, and its silence haunted me. I prayed for guidance in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, but instead of comfort, I found only sorrow and confusion.
One day we were sitting in class. I don't know, maybe history class or something. People pass notes from time to time. So I get a note. The note said, I like Martin Luther King. And then you just open up a small note, you open up the inside, and it just had the word dead. You have a range of emotions, disappointment, anger. You want to lash out, you want to yell.
I'm gonna tell you one thing. Maybe one day if I ever get the notion, I'm gonna see if I can't like take photographs of my high school yearbooks, some of the shit that got written, there was liberal use of the N word. You know, it was a lot of, hey, Stanley, you're okay for an N word. These people were, and this is back in the 80s. Let me put it to you this way. My yearbook sat in my old bedroom at home at my parents' house for decades because I did not take them with me. And I actually do have them in this house, and I couldn't tell you, I'd have to go search for them. I literally have never gone back and with wistfulness read through my yearbooks. I've never been back to visit my high school, and my brother went to my high school. You know, pretty much 11 years after I graduated, and I was in the Navy the whole time he was in high school. And you know, there were still one or two or three teachers that remembered me, and my brother used to hate it. He's like, they're always comparing me to you. But you know, they would go, hey, you know, tell him to wear his uniform and come back to school, and you know, we'll set up something he can speak to the students. I fucking never went back because, you know, I'm glad I went there. It was an excellent education, but dude, that place was a den of little racists. And quite frankly, I don't blame the kids. I blame their upbringing. You know, these kids were reflections of their parents and their households and their heritage. So, you know, and this is, you know, Clarence Thomas went to this school back in the 50s. He probably went through 10 times worse. You know, it's kind of where I developed my sharp tongue. You know, I am ruthless. You know, if I think you're a racist, I'm going to be ruthless in my ad hominems against you. I will be merciless. I will burn the bridge. I will scorch the earth if I think you're a fucking virulent racist. That's why I have no compunction about going after a John Galt or a Be Brave or even a CT. I'll go right at you and laugh when I do it, because I'm always going to win those fights.
In the spring, when I was walking back into the hall, someone was down watching TV, and he yelled up from the basement as I was walking in the dorm. He said, Martin Luther King has just been shot.
Dr. King was standing on the balcony of a second-floor hotel room tonight when, according to a companion, a shot was fired from across the street.
And the seminarian in front of me said, that's good. I hope the son of a bitch dies. And that was pretty much the end of me. That was it. Because that was the opposite of what I thought you said about a man of God and what a seminarian or the church should do. And that, if to the extent that I had any ambivalence, it ended that day. The priesthood had been my only goal. And when that went away, it was like I was in a free fall. So anyway, I go home, and now I face my grandfather.
As Clarence tells me about going to his grandfather to tell him he was quitting the seminary, it probably was the hardest point of his life, to tell that man that he was disappointing him.
And I'd like to say it's facing the music, but it wasn't music. It was a stony silence almost, and it was a coldness. So he took me to the living room, and he said that, as he had promised, when we came to live in 1955, that the door opened inward then. Now it was opening outward, and I was to leave his house. Since I had made the decisions of a man, I should live like one. And I said, when? And he said, I'll never forget it. Today, this day. I think I was fumbling around. I said, well, are you still going to help me with college? He said, no, you're a man, you figure it out. Where could I go? What would I do? First, the seminary, then the country. Now, the only real home I'd ever known. All were crashing around me. My mother had an extra room in her apartment, so I went over there.
I think you say that it felt like you were reversing your first walk to your grandfather's.
Yeah, I was going from 1955. I had come to this wonderful place that was a sanctuary, and now I was going back to live with my mother in her apartment.
Washington, Chicago, Detroit, Boston, New York. These are just a few of the cities in which the Negro anguish over Dr. King's murder expressed itself in violent destruction.
In summer '68 was when you had a lot of the riots. I mean, I thought everything was coming apart.
Some buildings were put to the torch, while the looters stripped block after block of stores along 7th Street.
I was getting ready for work, and I was listening to the radio while I did that.
Oh, my God. Senator Kennedy has been shot.
And they announced that he'd been assassinated. I dropped to my knees. I said, it's over. Bad things were happening. My grandfather had kicked me out. Kennedy was assassinated. I remember sitting there, Kennedy, King, Kennedy, KKK. I remember writing that, oh my God, there it is, KKK, you know. And that was probably the last straw. I mean, I didn't need a last straw, but that was it. That was the nail in the coffin for me. And for the first time in my life, racism and race explained everything. It became sort of the substitute religion. I shoved aside Catholicism, and now it was all about race. Every Southern black had known such moments and felt the rage that threatened to burn through the mask of meekness and submission behind which we hid our true feelings. I'm angry with my grandfather. I'm angry with the church. If it's a warm day, I'm angry. If it's a cold day, I'm angry. I'm just angry. I'm angry. I'm sort of lashing out at every single thing. Nothing is right. I'm staying in a room with a minor bird with my mother, with her 2 big dogs. But the one out that I do have is that I was accepted to Holy Cross. I've got 1 door is open, only one, and that was Holy Cross.
When he left the seminary and found his way to Holy Cross, he was entering society that was in turmoil. And he found his way to other blacks at Holy Cross who were very radical and Marxist.
We're supposed to be revolutionaries. So you go to the local Army-Navy store in Worcester and you get Army fatigues and boots, and why that was addressed is beyond me, but that's the way we dressed. I wore carpenter's pants and bib overalls.
We're going to shoot the cops who are shooting our black brothers in the back in this country. That's where we're going.
We were for anybody who's kind of in your face. It could be Stokely Carmichael, it could be H. Rap Brown.
Now, the brothers in here maintain that they will stay here until the university is willing to talk on their terms.
It could be Angela Davis, it could be Huey Newton. So the more radical tended to be the people we gravitated toward. Art Martin decided to start a Black student union, and he had some ideas, but I could type. I said, I'll type it up. I had my trusty Smith Corona typewriter with automatic return. So I said, what do you want in it? He said, anything you put in it. So I typed it up, and that became the Black Student Union.
When did you first meet Kathy Ambush, and what was she like?
I met her in my sophomore year. Our politics overlapped. Our politics tended to be more radical to left. We'd started dating and would date throughout my time at Holy Cross. When I would go back home, the exchanges with my grandfather were really horrible. Because I'd talk about the revolution, and I'd be drinking and wouldn't comb my hair, and it was bad. And he looked at me and he would say, I didn't raise you to be like this. After all our sacrifices.
What's up, Bobby? How you doing?
I thought he was weak.
By the way, let me go ahead, because there have been one or two people coming in. I think probably the title of this pop-up show is self-explanatory, but this is basically a Justice Thomas pop-up show based on a couple questions that I got from CKJ3 over the weekend. So, I figured it would be a good topic for an evening show. So we may not get all the way through this because it is almost 7:00, and this is a long video with 37 minutes, almost 38 minutes into an hour and 56-minute show. We may wind up just watching the second half of it tomorrow afternoon/evening, because I see folks who are kind of drifting away doing whatever it is they do in the evening. Damn, you know what? I haven't had sloppy joes in quite some time, Rick. That might be something I do tomorrow or Wednesday. That's a good suggestion. I haven't had sloppy joes in forever, and now you've made me want. Now you've made me want sloppy joes. Damn it. Oh, it's Clarence Thomas. You know what? I'm sure he'd be happy that you use the N-word like that. He'd feel down. This is Clarence Thomas's grandfather.
And
on the screen.
I'd gone up north and become one of those, as he said, damn educated fools. That I went up north and they put all that foolishness in my head. And my brother, who came back from the Vietnam War, didn't like it.
What did he say?
He told me that all of us should leave the country.
All you radicals.
All of us should leave the country. He had no use for any of us. But I went right back to my radical friends. In the spring of 1970, I was one of several Black student union members who went to Boston to take part in an anti-war rally. The organizers of the rally urged us to march to Harvard Square to protest the treatment of America's domestic political prisoners. Off we went, chanting, "Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh," and demanding freedom for Angela Davis, Erica Huggins, and anyone else we could think of. On the way to Cambridge, we stopped at this liquor store. This poor guy, he saw us and he gave us the liquor. I think he gave us some potato chips or something too. But he said, just go. And then on the way, we consumed this liquid courage, you know. Then we proceeded to be back and forth in Cambridge all night. I mean, it was tear gas, sirens. It was bad.
He's in the radical part right now. CK, he's literally talking about his radical days. So you caught it roughly in the middle. By the way, I'll drop the link to this particular. Actually, I put the link to this to this documentary in the show notes. If anybody wants to watch it on their own time. But like I said, we may not finish it all today because it is getting a little late. And I still, dinner's made, but I need to eat and watch, a movie or something like that before I go to sleep. So I keep old man hours, folks. Kale sandwiches. Hey, they do make vegetable subs though, Rick, which I actually like vegetable subs with the right kind of bread. They're actually pretty good.
I got back to campus at 4 in the morning, horrified by what I'd just done. I had let myself be swept up by an angry mob for no good reason, other than that I too was angry. I stopped in front of the chapel and prayed for the first time in nearly 2 years.
And then I asked God, I said, if you take anger out of my heart, I'll never hate again. And that was the beginning of the slow return to where I started. You know what Yale was back in the 1970s. Yale was 4 generations of Groton and Phillips Exeter, and my father's grandfather was here, and there were secret societies and all that sort of stuff. It was a different world, and it was a world that I didn't quite understand. When Jamal was born in February of my second year of law school, it woke me up about the direction that we were headed in our country and what the prospects would be for him.
Let me make one interjection here. I cannot imagine why you would even do children in grad school. I know people do it. I know people are married in grad school and all that sort of stuff, but I can't imagine. And I'll just leave it at that. Having a child in law school, his wife is probably working, to get him through law school. I just can't imagine why you would torture yourself like that. Kids are a lot of responsibility, and they take up a lot of your time.
I watched busing on TV, and busing was a big deal. Remember, because
the Boston busing stuff.
By federal court order, a fleet of buses was hired to transport black students to all-white schools and whites to black neighborhoods. Coming to South Boston, a traditionally conservative and Irish enclave, blacks who made the trip were met with catcalls, curses, and worse.
I'd been to South Boston and I was scared to death to be over there. And the schools were as bad as the schools in Roxbury, where the black kids were from. So why were you sending a kid through all that trouble to go to a school that's as bad or worse? That didn't make any sense to me. Someone has a theory, and then they insert human beings into their theory. You know, it's sort of like, have theory, add people, you know?
I actually like kale.
Instant coffee or something. Have coffee, add water. But I knew one thing. Nobody was going to have some social experiment and throw my son in there. In law school, I described myself as a lazy libertarian. And it was because I was looking at structures or restrictions on me, whether they were religious restrictions or structures or strictures on me. My grandfather and his rules, society and its rules. And I guess in a sense, I was saying, all of you leave me alone. In fact, my mantra when I was in law school is, leave me alone.
Mr. Rourke, the commission is yours.
Were you influenced by Ayn Rand's libertarian philosophy?
You know, Ayn Rand and Fountainhead started in high school, and this would play out later in law school.
We want you to adapt your building like this. And we must always compromise with the general taste, Mr. Rourke. You understand that, I'm sure.
No. If you want my work, you must take it as it is or not at all.
And so when you read these books, you say, yeah, okay, I'll become a day laborer rather than be told what to do.
Rourke, this is sheer insanity. Can't you give in just once? After all, you have to live.
Not that way.
How else? Don't you have to work?
I'd rather work as a day laborer if necessary.
I'd rather total failure in your world than to be told what to do.
And see, this is, in my opinion, where the John Galts and the Clarence Thomases and the Thomas Sowells, they just, now, Ayn Rand will fit in to a black radical / black conservative role, but not easily. I don't find a black libertarian that admirable, because it's impossible to be one. Literally, Clarence Thomas as a Supreme Court justice is not an Ayn Rand figure. He literally is there following and in theory determining what the law is. This fucking fantasy that the John Galt fool, which is an Ayn Rand character, Atlas Shrugged, it's literally just like Negro science fiction. I want to be white, and if I was white, my name would be John Galt.
Be made to do something that I think is wrong. Yale was the end of the line, and I made it through. So I really wanted my grandfather to be there, to witness the end, and to witness that the kid that he took in 1955 crossed the finish line. My grandfather did not come. He always had a reason. And, you know, I think I think he was upset with me. I could understand that. And I certainly had not given him any good reasons to have any deep and warm, fuzzy feelings about me or my graduation. So, no.
Okay, look, fool. That is literally rationalizing. So your grandfather wasn't proud that he told you to be a man, and you're a man who made it all the way through Yale Law School? That doesn't even make sense. You had just pissed the man off, and he didn't fucking want to come, whether you were graduating from Yale or not. The rift was substantive, and he just didn't, Yale or no Yale. It wasn't. It's deeper than that, and I don't buy the story. Basically,
Nobody could come. That was probably more difficult for me and embittered me more than anything else. I interviewed for jobs in DC, Atlanta, New York,
oh, this
LA,
is the part
with
that's
anyone,
awesome.
anywhere who might hire me. If you were Black and you were at Yale, the presumptions were quite different than if you were white. So if you're white and you graduated from Yale, the presumption is what? It is that you are really among the best. On the other hand, if you're Black and you're there, you didn't really quite belong there. So we'll discount that a bit. You can say 10%, 5%, whatever. But the reality was that discounted approach resulted in certainly me not being able to get a job.
But eventually, the Missouri Attorney General, Jack Danforth, offered you a job.
It was the only job offer I got. It was the quintessential Hobson's choice. He went on to promise me, Clarence, I promise you more work for less money than anybody in the country. The pay was...
Okay. Let me ask you a question. If he was such a libertarian, I bet he could have. There were Black lawyers. Why could he have not just been a solo practitioner? Why did he have to do a white shoe law firm or go work for Jay Danforth? And if I recall, Jay Danforth might still be alive. He was a senator eventually. He was Attorney General of Missouri back then. Look, bottom line is that, like any good story, there are some liberties taken. The man... Well, you know what? I won't even go there. I'll just leave it at that. I kind of don't believe that there were no options available. I bet what he did is he applied to all these white law firms and did not apply to any Black law firms.
Was 10,800.
Maybe the NAACP would have hired him. There's some complications and some stuff that I don't, that don't ring true, knowing what I know.
The hardest part about taking the job was he was a Republican. And the idea of working for a Republican was repulsive at best. I was a registered Democrat. I was left wing. And as nice as he was still a Republican. Putting that nicety aside, I wound up going. Cases poured through there. In those days, the Attorney General's office handled all the appeals from the local prosecutors across the state. At the time, my thinking was that all blacks were political prisoners. That's sort of the sophisticated level at which I looked at the criminal justice system. I worried about what I would do when I got a case involving black defendants. And then it happened. This guy was sitting on a bench or something, and this black woman comes by. He's black, she's black. She's got her 2 or 3 year old kid in the car with her. And in those days, most people didn't have air conditioning. So the windows are down. He comes up to the car at a stoplight with an old style can opener with a point, puts it to the kid's neck, and forces his way in the car, threatening the kid. And then he takes her to
A carjacking?
remote location, rapes and sodomizes her, and takes her to another location and rapes and sodomizes her again.
This case was far from unusual. Blacks were responsible for almost 80% of violent crimes committed against blacks and killed over 90% of black murder victims.
For most
yeah.
people, that would be obvious. For me, it was one of these road to Damascus experiences.
Okay, what he's not mentioning is the same is true. White on white crime is a thing as well. And the Clarence Thomases, the B. Braves, and, I'm actually, Clarence Thomas is a very elite, Supreme Court justice. I'm doing him disrespect by even mentioning like a B. Brave. But that's the part they don't tell you. Yeah, there's black on black crime, but whites commit crimes against whites the majority of the time. This is not ringing true.
Jack Danforth got elected to the Senate.
You know what? Let me be bitter right. let me be bitter right quick. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Brian. I think it's an excellent video too. I am a little bitter that it's not attracting more Zhang. Where is Zhang? I don't see Zhang. But anyway, oh hey, what's up, Zhang? To all the Laotians, watch your back. I don't even know what that means.
And I really wanted to move more toward business. I had better options now.
Oh, what's up, A-Dub? How you doing?
It was a fine job, but it was not enough work for me. I had too much energy. They spoon-fed the work, and they parceled it out. I was used to the work pouring in.
I noticed that Monsanto employed a number of talented blacks who should have been moving up the corporate ladder far more quickly.
Did you go to speak to the affirmative action manager? And
I confronted him about it, and he pulls out this EEO report with the numbers on it. It's one of these computer printouts, as though those are people. He's not talking about who's getting training, who's got mentors, what assignments they have, who's getting promoted. He's got his report that he shows to the Labor Department, and that's these statistics.
The affirmative action manager, he was African-American as
Yes,
well.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
He wasn't sympathetic.
He was doing his job, and his reports said he was okay.
He didn't care that these other black managers were stalled. And
well, I don't know if he cared. He was doing his job, and the reports were okay. That's the most I got. But I just thought that we're kidding ourselves. We're looking at numbers, and the numbers prove everything. And human beings are having a lot of difficulties.
I could feel the golden handcuffs of a comfortable but unfulfilling life snapping shut on my wrists. I had to quit now, or I never would.
And Shortly after that, I get a call from Senator Danforth to see if I'd be interested in working for him.
More than anything else, I want my candidacy to unify our country, to renew the American spirit and sense of purpose.
In the fall of 1980, I had decided to vote for Ronald Reagan. It was a giant step for a black man. But I was distressed by the Democratic Party's promises to legislate the problems of blacks out of existence.
I pledge to you to restore to the federal government the capacity to do the people's work without dominating their lives.
Reagan, by contrast, was promising an end to the indiscriminate social engineering of the 60s and 70s. Reagan won.
Yeah, well, the bottom line, and this is somewhat consistent with that little part I read from Corey Robbins' biography of Clarence Thomas. You know what? The Democrats couldn't fix race discrimination to the degree that a lot of people would like. So, hey, let's just do a Reagan who at least promises unfettered, government interference with, your businesses, that sort of thing. Again, Clarence Thomas, at least in his biography, the theory is, hey, you know what? Blacks can't win or be equal socially or politically. The country is systemically racist. So economics is a place that, black people can at least make a good living, and then just isolate yourself. Very John Galt, very be brave, very just fucking give up. Hey, if you're a second class citizen, but you're living like a king, then hey, what are you complaining about? And there are those who don't give in to that acceptance of second class citizenship. It's unacceptable.
In a landslide.
So help me God.
Now, congratulate you, sir.
For the first time in my adult life, Washington was full of serious talk about the possibility of getting government off the backs of the poor.
This is really an historic opportunity. The economic and social advancement of blacks in this country is still a great unfinished task.
Tom Sowell, he invited me to this conference, and it would be named the Fairmont Conference because it was held at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. It was, how do we rethink the policies toward blacks in this country in a new administration?
Many social problems are worsening. Continued disintegration of families.
I sat at this table, and there was a young black reporter there, and I knew nothing about the press. One question he asked me was, why was I so interested in all these social issues? And I explained to him because of the destruction I saw it doing home in Savannah. And as an example of that, I used my sister and her kids being objects of these programs. Little did I know he would write an article about this and would turn it into an op-ed.
The article by Juan Williams became a point at which Clarence became a public persona.
then license is given to others to attack you in whatever way they want to. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. You weren't supposed to oppose busing. You weren't supposed to oppose welfare.
Perhaps it marked a course for you, Justice Thomas.
Oh, I don't know if it marked a course, but there was no going back. The Reagan administration was running into the storm. Everything the president did, he was called a racist. That was from the very beginning. I was under constant attack. Oh my gosh.
We have attempted in the last 2 years to remedy a wide range of problems within the commission.
Congressman Barney Frank says he remains skeptical about progress under the current administration.
I'm pleased with that. It's also an opportunity to acknowledge the record.
We have a positive record, but we think that you should never back down. That point is one that I can't stress enough.
Any black misguided enough to accept a job in the Reagan administration was automatically branded an Uncle Tom. After I wrote a letter to the editor of Playboy, taking issue with a 1986 article by Harding Carter called Reagan and the Revival of Racism, Carter responded as follows. As a Southerner, Mr. Thomas is surely familiar with those chicken-eating preachers who gladly parroted the segregationist line in exchange for a few crumbs from the white man's table. He's one of the few left in captivity. Not a single civil rights leader objected to this nakedly racist language.
Well, they probably agreed. What were they supposed to do? Not agree? And Harding Carter, by the way, was Jimmy Carter's, I think he was Jimmy Carter's press secretary, also from Georgia. So, hey, you know what? The civil rights leaders probably thought the same thing. And they probably laughed when they read it. You can be sure they did read it. And apparently it does not it didn't occur to you that the civil rights leaders agreed with that assessment. So let me start this back.
On the personal side, your marriage was strained at this point?
It's one of those things I didn't think it was going to work. So, I mean, I think many people go through that.
Of course, many do, but what do you think was the reason in this case?
You know, I really don't know. It just wasn't there, and I think you have to be honest with yourself and not wait until it deteriorates so you do harm to somebody who did you no harm.
I can imagine how difficult it must have been for all three of you.
Yeah, it was, you live with it. Jamal came to live with me. His mother thought it would be best for me to have primary responsibility. Being with him was my happy place, being at home with him.
How did you first hear that your grandfather was dying?
Well, I don't know how we get so busy in DC. I totally regret not going home more. I just regret it. I was with my brother, and he told me my grandfather had died. And that was like, and I think from then on, I was in a bit of a fog. It was really horrible. When I got to the funeral, no sooner did the service begin than I started to weep shamelessly and uncontrollably. All I could do was think of the things I wish I had done differently. Why had I spent so much?
That's the interior of St. Benedict's. I haven't been there in decades, quite frankly. Next time I go home, I guess I will. But yep, it's an actual beautiful, very simple church. Um, so yeah, I recognize that immediately.
Time arguing with him.
I was
I
an
would never
altar
be
boy
able
on
to
that
tell him
altar.
how right he'd been, or how much I admired and loved him.
Savannah.
Shortly after my grandfather's
I
death,
think it is
my
the oldest
grandmother had a stroke
black
while
parish
lying
in the
in bed.
United States. Born and raised,
Within
actually
an
baptized there
hour or
too.
so, she was dead. Certainly, it was like a trap door. Somebody opened a trap door and you fell through it. I mean, there's no foundation. And by the time I went back to Washington, I had thought a lot more about things. I would go outside and gaze at the Capitol dome. So I'm asking them, why am I doing this? There's nothing positive going on. And I'm getting the heck beat out of me. I have to then flip it around a little bit. For what will you die? Is there something in life that you will die for? What about your principles? So I decided that the principles on which I was raised, my grandparents, the principles of this country, were worth dying for. So what are these principles? I was interested in why this government? Why this government? Why not a parliamentary system? Why not a dictatorship?
When Clarence was at EEOC, one of the best things looking back that he did was to hire 2 speechwriters who worked with him on reading founding documents and understanding American exceptionalism. So John Marini and Ken Masugi were anchors for what came out to be his jurisprudence.
And we would literally spend hours discussing the founding. And then they would give me reading materials and we would write articles and we would go off to American Political Science Association events and argue with positivists and libertarians. Oh gosh, now that was a lot of fun. In the sea of all this stuff Thomas Jefferson had written in 1776, all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That's natural law in a nutshell. How then could a country founded on these principles have permitted slavery and segregation to exist? The answer was that it couldn't, not without being untrue to its own ideals. I was looking for a way of thinking, a set of ideals that fundamentally, at its core, says slavery's wrong. At its core, which natural law, of course, does. I was scheduled to go up to New York to a meeting, and she happened to be there.
We met in 1986 at a conference on how long does America need race preference policies to get over slavery. And his experiences were so resonant and so powerful and so genuine. I was struck by him.
She was a gift from God that I had prayed for. And then, I was iffy because I started questioning God's package. Like, what are you doing? You pray for God to send you someone. He sends you someone. And you say, oh, but she's white or she's younger. He sent you someone. What are you talking about? So that was the end of that. And she's been, it's been a fabulous gift from God. George H.W. Bush's transition team asked if I would be interested in becoming a federal judge. That's a job for old people, I said. I'm 40. I can't see myself spending the rest of my life as a judge. They asked me to talk to Larry Silberman, who was a judge on the D.C. Circuit. I said, Larry, I don't want a lifetime appointment. He said, Clarence, it's not slavery. You can leave if you don't like it.
That's a very interesting comparison.
But once I got to the D.C. Circuit, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the work. I liked the people. Virginia worked across the street from me, so we commuted in every day, and we really enjoyed our little house. We really enjoyed our projects. We enjoyed our anonymity and our time together.
Here at home, the search is on for a Supreme Court nominee with the retirement of Justice Thurgood Marshall.
All I know is that Justice Marshall retired, and that was a shock. So I went to work on Sunday, and one of my law clerks was all up in arms, and he says, Kenneth Bunkport's on the line. It was the president telling me to come up on Monday to have lunch to discuss this Supreme Court thing.
I am very pleased to announce that I will nominate Judge Clarence Thomas to serve as Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court.
Judge, a question for you. What do you say to critics who say the only reason you're being picked is because you're black?
I think a lot worse things have been said. I disagree with that, but I'll have to live with it.
Refer him to the press. How about that for a name?
Well, I also say I didn't make this election.
I mean, the attack started immediately. And the things they accused you of everything but murder, I guess.
The Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell told reporters that the nomination shows that President Bush is against quotas for every position except the Supreme Court.
Judge Thomas praises Louis Farrakhan, the black Muslim minister notorious for his pro-Hitler anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Thomas's strict Catholic education terrifies abortion rights groups afraid of more abortion restrictions.
Did you meet with board members of the NAACP?
They said they were going to be non-committal and were not going to oppose me. Well, shortly after that, they opposed me.
His inconsistent views on civil rights policies, which make him an unpredictable element in an increasingly radical conservative court.
And what I was told by friends who gave me a copy of the AFL-CIO's letter to them, requiring them to oppose me, what I was told was that they needed cover for the women's groups to oppose me. So they needed the NAACP out front.
Write your senators and representatives. Tell them Clarence Thomas is unacceptable.
He has indicated that he believes in natural law and he does not believe in privacy.
We don't need a lot of questions to be asked before we bark this guy. We simply immediately bark him.
We want you to organize pickets to their offices, follow them from the airport to their supermarket.
there is substantial opposition to Clarence Thomas. His history of supporting a judicial philosophy that's really out of step with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution.
We know exactly what's going on here. And to pretend that it's for some other reason, stop. Do I have?
Well, folks, I have run out of steam. I am going to do the rest of this video tomorrow. The patterns on 90s shirts. I'll do a part 2 of this tomorrow afternoon. I'll be around for the morning show. You know, plenty of news articles that I'm collecting. So I appreciate those who had the fortitude enough to do this jaunt through this Clarence Thomas documentary. So as always, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new, please subscribe. You know, I try and mix it up a little bit. You know, I'm not, you know, necessarily a fan of Clarence Thomas's judicial philosophy or political views, but he is an elder and deserving of our respect. And then maybe tomorrow I'll do a compare and contrast with Ketanji Brown Jackson. So again, I appreciate everybody's support for the show. And I will see you all in the morning. Hate to cut it short, but you know, I'm getting tired and it is dinner time. So you all have a good evening. See you in the morning.